Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. For several of the most recent vlogs, I've been talking about what I see as a growing movement of black voters away from the Democratic Party. I promised in yesterday's vlog that I would talk today about a similar movement that I see among my people, the Jews, away from the Democratic Party. Now, there have been for a while Republican Jewish organizations, so it's not new for, well, as you'll see when I talk a little farther on, I left the Democratic Party in 1980, so this is nothing new, but there is a new organization I want to talk about. But before I get to them, I just want to revisit the subject of black voters moving away from the Democratic Party, realizing that the Democratic Party's philosophy, especially on abortion, does not align with theirs. So I just want to give you a couple quick examples, starting, well, I don't know how quick it is. It's a video. It's a 2-minute video, but watch this video, and then I have just one more example.
And then another issue that I'm having is also with white guilt. White guilt, I have a huge issue with white guilt, man, on a liberal side. And because you know what white guilt to me is? White guilt to me is low expectation racism. That's all it is. It's, you know, you see white people feeling all concerned for black people. Oh, you know, you guys, oh, you know, it's our fault. I'm so sorry. You guys can never be accomplished in this country because of what we did to you, and because, you know, oh my gosh, it's, you know, and that's, to me, it's sad. That's white, and that white guilt, that virtue signaling, that's an issue. A big issue in this country right now on the left, on the liberal side of things. A lot of my conservatives, white people on the conservative side of things, they don't look at me and feel, oh, so sorry for me, or I'm not capable of being accomplished or being successful. They don't look at me like that. They have respect for me as a fellow American citizen. And that's all I ask for as an American citizen, is mutual respect. I don't need you to cower down and take a knee down for me. I don't need you to, you know, to kiss my boots or nothing like that. I don't need nothing crazy like that. I don't need none of that nonsense. Just treat me like a fellow American. I'll do the same to you, and we can keep it moving. And that's what all I ask. And conservatives give me that. People on the left, they look down on me. They look at me as somebody who can't. Like, look at how they talk about voter IDs when they talk about the black community. Look at white liberals when they talk about voter IDs in the black community. They talk about like it's impossible for blacks to have IDs and to be able to vote for themselves. Like, how's that even possible? How can blacks even, how can they accomplish that? Like, you know how racist that sounds when I hear white people talk about that? That's real racism right there. If you think a black person can't get an ID, you know how easy it is to get an ID, especially in New York City? All you really literally almost have to do is walk in a building. I came in and get a New York ID, state ID, when I just moved here 7 years ago. When I just moved here, I literally walked in the building, had all my mail with me, had like my past 3 bills, all this information, social security card, everything I need, a birth certificate. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, bro, all you need is, you're Christopher Wright, like pretty much, right? And I'm like, yep. And they're like, okay, well, here's your ID. It was that easy. It wasn't a long, difficult process, a process that any adult black person can do by themselves. So to act like it's impossible for blacks to get voter IDs or are capable of doing it on their own, that's racism. That's low expectation racism. And that's where I see modern day racism in 2020 coming at me. It's not some KKK guy in Arkansas on the mountain somewhere with a white hoodie on. It's a little college grad, you know, white kid, Antifa, with a mask on, with a black mask on, acting a fool, talking about I'm not capable to get an ID and vote. That's the racism I see in 2020. That's what's going on. It's on the left.
Welcome back. Now, I just want to share one more item on the shift of black voters away from the Democratic Party. This is an article. Terry Crews, white people can be Republican, but, quote, if you're black, you have to be one thing, unquote. On Tuesday, Brooklyn Nine-Nine star Terry Crews slammed presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden, warned about, quote, black supremacy, unquote, and insisted that black people should not be pigeonholed into one political party. The black actor shot back at Biden's notorious statement to Charlemagne the God, quote, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're voting for me or Trump, then you ain't black, unquote. Quote, the problem with that is black people have different views, unquote, Crews said on the CBS show The Talk. Quote, when you're white, you can be Republican, Libertarian, Democrat. You can be anything. But if you're black, you have to be one thing. Even Joe Biden said, quote, hey man, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, unquote. The actor warned against, quote, gatekeepers, unquote, of blackness. I just wanted to share those before we get now to today's subject. I want to start, though, with a comment that I got a couple of days ago from Lynn777. I'm not going to read the whole quote because it's lengthy, but there are a couple little snippets I want to share because they bear on today's subject. Things are very fluid these days. I'm a Democrat who has been concerned about my party swinging left for several years now. Then she goes on with some other discussion about defunding the police, other issues. And then, I'm afraid that VP Biden will not be strong enough against defunding the police. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote for now. I'm sure there are other Dems and independents who feel the same way. Time will tell. Yeah, there are others who feel the same way. Just Christian Democrats too. The Democratic Party, or a large part of it, are alarmed by this movement, this takeover of the Democratic Party by the far left. Now, I want to get to the Jews. That's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about a new organization called Jexit. Now, what is Jexit? You've heard of Brexit, Britain leaving the European Union. Similarly, talking about black voters moving away from the Democratic Party, there is a movement or a term, Blexit, black exit. So this is a new organization, Jexit. So Jewish exit. This is the first organization of Jews that I've seen. There are others that have been Republican and supported Republicans, but this is the first organization, Jewish organization, I've seen that is actively calling out to Jewish Democrats to leave the Democratic Party. So I'm just going to read something here from their mission statement, a couple of quotes, and then I have a comment that I want to make about this new organization. But American Jews, as well as those around the world, are facing an existential crisis. Anti-Semitism, both here and abroad, is on a precipitous rise. And I would just mention as an aside, one of those places where anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States is New York City, specifically the Crown Heights neighborhood, where there have been a number of attacks on Jews. I would further add that this is a Democrat-controlled city. Democratic mayor, Democratic city council, Democrats pretty much all the way down. Getting back to the quotes, Jews have traditionally been a bulwark of the Democratic Party. For decades, American Jews have consistently supported Democrat candidates. However, that party is undergoing a seismic and alarming change. Accepting, approving, and failing to condemn clearly anti-Semitic comments by congressional Democrats show the new direction of the party. Whether it's Representative Omar stating, quote, "Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel," unquote. Speaker Pelosi defending her statements, not Speaker Pelosi's statements, Omar's statements. Speaker Pelosi defending her statements, or Representative Tlaib accusing her colleagues of, quote, "forgetting what country they represent," unquote, when they defend Israel. The trend is clear. Similarly, their support of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, otherwise known as BDS, which couches its clear anti-Semitic basis as being only, quote, anti-Israel, unquote, clearly speaks volumes. Jexit believes that American Jews can no longer blindly vote Democrat. I second that 100%, and yet I wrote to them. They have on their website, which I'm linking to, by the way, in the description if you want to visit the website. They also have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. I subscribed, but I also, as I said, I sent them through their contact form a message saying why I wish them the best of luck, but I can't completely support them. Though I did compliment them, I praised them. I said it's laudatory that you have made this organization to alert Jewish Democrats about the growing anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the Democratic Party. But the problem I have with them is, and I'll get to my own story in a minute, which is why I have a problem with them, but the problem I have with them is I told them, or I wrote to them, I looked at your whole site and all I see is about Israel, that the Jewish Democrats should leave the Democratic Party because, as I said, the Democratic Party's increasing anti-Semitism and animosity towards Israel to the point of endangering the existence of Israel and, let's face it, the lives of millions and millions of my fellow Jews. But the problem I have with him, I told him, is I don't see anything about the Democrats' position on health care, on taxes, on, well, these riots that we've been seeing, on political correctness, on economics, on jobs, on especially the failures of the Great Society and all that has resulted therefrom, including all these riots, the failure to condemn the democratic way of governing all these cities. All these cities where we are seeing these problems, they are all governed by Democrats. And finally, what I would think would be an obvious hot button issue for any Jew, that's the issue of race quotas, especially in colleges where lower scoring minorities are getting admitted to some of the best universities, Harvard, Yale, over higher scoring, better SAT scoring Jews. And by the way, not just Jews these days, it's Asians too. So I would wonder, you Asians, what are you doing in the Democratic Party? It's being done to you too. I went to Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. Not saying it's a bad school. Well, it may be now after years and years, literally decades of being governed by, or run by liberals. But it was a good school at the time when I was going there. But I would have loved to have gone to Harvard instead of Wayne State University, but I couldn't get into Harvard because my SAT score and my high school grades were not good enough. So the question to me is, why should somebody who did as bad or even worse than I did on the SAT, whose grades are no better than mine and maybe even worse than mine, why should somebody like that get admitted to a college that I can't get in based strictly on skin color? I don't see how that is fair, number one. And number two, I don't see why this Jexit group doesn't even mention it. So I said to them, it doesn't seem to me like you have any real problem with the Democratic Party except for this one issue. If tomorrow the Democratic Party kicked out Omar and Tlaib, kicked out all the anti-Semites and adopted a strong pro-Israel position, then you would be okay. You would not be calling on Democrats to leave. You would want them to stay in the Democratic Party. You people who founded and are running this Jexit site, presumably you would have stayed in the Democratic Party too. This Jexit organization might not even exist, which gets to my story. As I've said in past vlogs, I left the Democratic Party in 1980. That was a time when the Democratic Party was still very, very, very strongly pro-Israel. I left on other issues. I left because, well, if you want the whole story, my thinking started changing about the Democratic Party really in 1968, the 68 election between Humphrey and Nixon, because I was a college student at the time at Wayne State University. I was sitting in the student union, and there were students going around to the tables just begging people to vote for Humphrey. It didn't bother me that they were urging people to vote for a Humphrey. It did bother me. What really bothered me was, for the first time, I got the sense that they did not just disagree with Nixon, they hated him. Just like they hated Reagan, just like they hate Trump today. That a lot of what they do is hatred. That's number one. The second problem occurred later around, well, I voted for Jimmy Carter. He was a disaster. I'm not going to go into details on Carter, but Reagan came along, and I voted for Reagan. When I voted for Reagan, I was skeptical at first, but I said, give the guy a chance. Reagan, we had a booming economy under Reagan, and then we also had the earned income tax credit. What got me thinking about the Republican Party, got me really thinking, was that I could see that Reagan found the perfect compromise, and Reagan used to be a Democrat. He voted for Roosevelt, for FDR all 4 times. He voted for Kennedy, and then he saw the party. Well, as he said, I did not leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. That's pretty much what my situation was. But Reagan enacted all these pro-growth policies. We had this great economic growth, and then he used the money that we were making to help poor people. To me, that was the perfect compromise. Let the economy grow, put in pro-growth policies, and then use the money to help poor people. The same way as I think I've said in an earlier vlog at Google, if the people who started Google, the 2 guys that started Google in a college dormitory or wherever they started it, if they would have taken the seed money that they got from investors in the beginning and invested that on massages and big buildings and free health care for everybody and for these kitchens. I actually visited Google. I'm a real estate broker. I was working in New York. I'm in Tennessee, but I was at the Google's headquarters in New York, and I saw they had these wonderfully equipped, fully stocked kitchens on every floor, all these perks. The point is that Google became a very successful, wealthy company, and then they were making tons of money, and then they used the money, a good piece of the money, to benefit their employees without hurting the profitability and the future prospects of the company. That's what I saw with Reagan, that Reagan enacted these pro-growth policies and generated money to help the poor people, and the Democrats, instead of supporting him and say, okay, now we have a way to work together, they were against him, and they've been against it ever since. And that's when the light bulb went off over my head, and I realized that the Democratic Party is not about helping poor people, it's about hurting rich people, and you can see that in their policies. For instance, I'll just end with this story, I guess, because this might be getting a little lengthy here. But Tom Foley, former Democratic Speaker of the House of Representatives, he wanted to oppose, I forget who the president was, but it was a Republican president. He wanted to oppose a tax cut. Somebody came to him on his staff and said, well, here's our argument. We can say that if this tax cut goes through, the wealthy will make tons of money, millions of dollars or whatever. The average person gets only $10. And Tom Foley said, no, you can't do that. You can't tell them that. And the staffer said, why not? He says, well, if you tell people they can get $10, they'll say, where's my $10? In other words, they would want the money. Who cares if the rich get more? That's what I learned about the Democratic Party. They will not let a poor person have a penny if it means a rich person gets 2 pennies. That is the Democratic Party, and that brings me back to this Jexit group, that they apparently have no problem with that. So that's why I can't fully join them. I can endorse them on Israel and anti-Semitism and BDS, but I can't really completely support them because I don't think they are really aware of what the Democratic Party is. I think they're just a one-issue organization. But I do see a growing awareness, at least. As a conservative who left in 1980, I do see some hopeful signs. So I'm just going to leave on a hopeful sign and with a request for a thumbs up if you like this video. Share with anybody you think would also like the video. Got any comments? You can put them in the comment section below the video. There's a good place, well, it's the same place, comment section, but you can ask questions, suggest future topics. Most of all, I love getting subscribers. If I get a lot of subscribers, enough subscribers, I can maybe make a buck or two off of this website one day, and then I'd have even more time to make even better videos for everybody. But for now, I guess all I can do is ask for the thumbs up, ask you to subscribe, and ask you to come back and see me again, tell you how much I look forward to seeing all of you again, and until I do see all of you again, bye.